Well, yes. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, internet, world, YouTube, Facebook, and a warm welcome to you, Ryan.
Well, Josh, welcome to you as
Thank
well.
you. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
It is good to see you.
It is good to see you. Welcome, everybody, to our Vitalogy podcast, as it says right above me. If you're watching us on the screen of some format, YouTube or Facebook. If you're joining us on the podcast, I want to say thank you so much for finding us. I believe I'm supposed to tell people to rate, review, hit the ding button or whatever they call it. They always say that.
Ding button.
That's what all the YouTubers say.
Is it?
I'm just trying to be one of the YouTubers,
Oh
Ryan.
gosh, hit the ding button.
Let's
will
be
ya?
let's be YouTubers.
Oh man, that's
they
awesome.
click the bell, I think is how they say it.
Okay,
That's how the kids these days
ring that bell.
You can ring my bell. I don't think that's the right.
I don't think the YouTubers are saying
No,
that.
they're probably not. They are definitely not. So
they
that's
shouldn't.
there you go. There you go. I don't think we don't say that a lot because this is a podcast about life and about having life to the full. And that's why we call it Vitalogy, which is the study of life. And so we talk about sermons and everything. So that's why we don't really care if you ring the bell or whatever that is, because we're not making any money on this by any means. And so we just want to be a resource to you, to our church, to anyone else listening out there. We want to be some maybe a little entertainment as well. Okay, that's not bad. But we want to help you think well about this journey of life and hopefully point you to Jesus.
Yeah, that's why we always say there's no questions are off limits.
Exactly.
We're willing to address any questions that you have. So bring them on, questions@efcc.org, or if you're listening live, you can comment in the chat.
Yeah.
Anywhere on YouTube or on Facebook.
I know sometimes people just email us. Sometimes people text us. Some people stop us. I've been stopped and just said, "Oh, can you guys talk about this?"
Yeah.
In fact, I'm starting to. Okay, and you know who you are if you're listening, Matt. I've started to put together a list of the books that you've recommended.
Oh, right on.
Because there's been a few people who are like, I want to know.
Cool.
Because they need a reading list, and so we'll get to that segment later.
Yes.
Which is so creatively titled. You'll get to that as Ryan brought a book. But anyway, this is a good time. And so today we're going to be talking about some things that has brought up a lot of conversation.
Yeah, it seems like it has.
This little tiny series
in a good way.
In a great way. Here we are. We're talking about a series that we've done over the last couple weeks, the last 2 weeks, on one of the shortest books of the Bible. It's actually the third shortest book of the Bible. There's two shorter books in the New Testament. Those have 2nd John and 3rd John.
3rd John, yeah.
And I can't remember the order of which is shorter now that I think about it, but they're within a few verses of each other. And sure enough, Philemon is the third.
Right on.
And yet, this is the thing. This little tiny book that has often been forgotten. So many people have come up to me and said, like, I don't really remember reading that book, or I've skipped over that book.
When did they put that in the Bible?
It's been in for a long time.
Well, here's the thing about Philemon. I don't know if you sort of saw this too, and even maybe wrestled with it. We named a book, our study of the book, The Anatomy of Forgiveness.
Yes.
And it doesn't mention the word forgiveness.
Exactly.
Once.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mention the word reconciliation once.
Yes.
And so there is a sense that either we're reading it wrong, or it's intentionally subversive and cryptic. And it's, I would argue, it is subversive in its very nature. And so there's subtleties, there's winks, there's nods that are a part of Philemon. And we did our best to try to give language to those and draw them out a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. Well, because this is not teaching on forgiveness. So Paul was not writing to say this is how you forgive. Now he may have been, I think he was modeling it, but you wouldn't say, hey, Philemon, I'm going to teach you how to forgive right now, and then go about, or I'm going to teach you how to forgive Onesimus. So this is what I want you to do step by step. That gets into all those things that we've talked about that forgiveness isn't. You cannot compel it.
Yeah.
Can't be like controlled, and you can't force it on anybody. So here he is, he's modeling something. And so that's exactly what I think what he's doing is, I mean, he teaches us a lot in this.
Oh, he does. And just to defend us a little bit,
Yeah.
we're certainly not the only ones who
Oh,
would
no,
have
no, no.
who'd framed this letter that way. That's
Yeah.
probably the most common way to teach it, to talk about it. And so we're not alone in that. But it is interesting that word is not mentioned explicitly anywhere in this letter.
No, yeah.
This short
Yeah,
little letter.
absolutely. Yeah. Reconciliation is not either.
Nope.
And yet it is clearly about two people reconciling. And so that's where, you know, that this is very much a powerful letter, because in that world, what Paul is asking on many levels is profound, is powerful. I love the idea of a time bomb,
Yeah.
right? That on, I mean, I could see on many levels you could talk about this as putting in a time bomb to destroy slavery one day, right? So in this, it's putting an end to that, but really on like kind of classism in a sense, like, because you could teach a bunch on this, on how people see each other differently, value each other differently, and here a slave and a master, probably the two biggest extremes in that time, right?
Yeah.
Sadly,
it's one of the I would argue that one of at least the three, which is why Paul in Galatians would say, slave nor free,
yeah.
Jew nor Greek, male nor female.
Yes.
That there were, and right, a prayer that a Jewish man would often say is, God, thank you for not making me a Gentile. Thank you for not making me a slave. Thank you for not making me a female. Right? That's the way that they would pray. And so those are the three distinct categories that the gospel intentionally breaks down. And this draws out one of those for us in really like quite poignant detail in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's about as far as an extremes you can get, and yet he brings them together. So he's just dropping that time bomb to give us, and that idea comes that it's like it didn't explode the institution there.
No,
right? It's not like a 335 word letter written to a slave owner is going to end an institution.
Right.
I mean, that just wasn't his purpose. But what it did was kind of give the ammunition, and like, I don't know, the bomb was ticking. And the more we think about it, the more we read it within Scripture, then, because that as it got part of Scripture, it became the grounds for that institution ending. Absolutely. So which is really cool. So anyway, that we're jumping in already a little bit to this, and I want to say hi, Connie. Connie is joining us. Oh, she says
hi, Connie. It's good to hear from you.
It is.
Hope you are well.
Great to see you. And so yes, like you said, this idea of anatomy of forgiveness. That was your idea.
Yeah, I sort of wanted to I wanted us to jump in and dig around in forgiveness and sort of slice it and dice it and try to look at it from some different angles.
I love it.
So week 1 was really sort of a theological construct, and then week 2 was a little bit more of a practical, what does this look like in our daily lives?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, I did get, I got credit because, I mean, I preached the first sermon, so someone said this to me, and I was like, oh, I didn't get that. So, and I don't know if you did either. The anatomy of forgiveness is, it's as if it's this like a physical body language about, and even on the imagery, we had a human body there and talking about forgiveness. And what she pointed out to me was that as a body, this is something, as a church body, we need to deal with forgiveness at times.
Oh, yeah, that was not intentional.
See, okay.
That's good,
I thought
that's good.
Either Ryan is a lot smarter than I thought.
No, I'm not as smart as you think.
I'm just kidding. No, or it was that was just that was a great observation she had that we didn't really dive into too much. We could have. Yeah. We really could have, because that is what this is about. And And one of the things I noticed in those early passages is this is apparently to Paul, this is a very communal thing.
Right. That was a
Right.
great observation that you made, Josh. Like, this isn't like, hey, Philemon, take this, read this in your room,
Just
and then go
personally.
execute on it. It's
No.
read it to the whole church.
Yes.
Like, let the church read your mail, quite literally,
Yes. Absolutely.
and then hold you accountable to live out what Paul is subtly nudging him
Yes.
towards.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Subtly, not so subtly. Right.
I could compel you, but I'm not going to, and
Yes.
charge it to my account. But let's not talk about how much you owe me.
Yes. Yes. I could compel you to do what is required. Right.
Yeah.
Not just what I suggest. Oh, by the way, what is required by you? You know, there's so many things in here, but all that to say that this has, I mean, I've had tons of people talk to me about, sometimes they've talked to me about how much this passage, this study has meant to them, this idea of forgiveness. There's a lot of people who have forgiveness issues, let's just say, okay, of which I am one of them. Okay, I mean, I think this is one of those universal things, and yet I think we think that forgiveness is almost one of those basic things, but I think it could have been one of those basic things that we heard about, talked about once, but then we just don't talk about enough.
I think we make a lot of assumptions.
Maybe that's a good point.
Yeah. And I do think it's important to keep coming back to one of the things that I said, or at least intended to say, I don't know if I said it all services, but I said the truth is Philemon could be written in most friendships, marriages, and families. That this whole idea of receive him or her and welcoming someone back, or forgiveness in general, is something that is very, very applicable in almost every one of our lives.
Yes.
So I think that is one of the reasons it resonates, is because in so many ways it's our story too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so anyway, this is one of those, this could have been a longer series.
In hindsight, yes.
It really could have. Now, I guess you could kind of say that about a lot of scripture, right? I mean, just about any passage you can go into.
Do you think anybody will say that after we're done teaching 1 Corinthians for a year?
I mean,
anybody's gonna go, this could have been a longer series. Just kidding. We're gonna split it up. It's gonna be fresh. It's gonna be. I think both of us are really excited about where we're going with that.
Know.
I sort of joke.
I think once again you'd be surprised, because there's a few passages in there that we're looking at that are quite long.
That's a great point.
And yet there's a few that are quite difficult too. So this is
some of the most difficult in the
some
New
of the
Testament,
most, right? Yeah. So that's gonna be a great series. And well, that's one of the things I love about this church. I love about people listening to this, is that it's a church that just loves scriptures and love diving into them. And I just love how people have been made aware of a book that they just hadn't thought much about.
Yeah.
And so this has been fun.
I feel like every year we should try to teach through a 1-chapter book, at least as long as we can. Right? Like Jude, maybe next. Jude is one of those
Jude. Oh yeah. That's right.
Mind-blowing books. Anyway.
All right.
Maybe that's next.
Yeah,
at some point.
I haven't heard a series on 3 John ever.
We may do one and find out why.
maybe. Yeah, Habakkuk. It's a pretty small one. It's not. 3 chapters. Yeah. So, is that the smallest in the Old Testament? I think so. Yeah, sure. Okay, good. All right. Well, Carolyn has joined us. Hello, Carolyn. Good afternoon to you as well. And all right. Well, now, so let's dive in a little bit, because this was part 2, like you said, a little bit more practical. You talked about the time bomb that this is, because I think it was wise to go back and kind of reaffirm that the slavery issue, just in case somebody is tuning in for the first time.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that is so challenging about this letter, right? And so, my thought is, hey, if you missed last week, I don't want you to miss this part of like what we talked about and why. So the way I said it is similar to the way that you said it. Was I said Paul didn't outright condemn the practice of slavery, but in the short little letter, he planted a time bomb inside of it that would eventually help destroy it from the inside out. This letter isn't so much about the institution of slavery as it is about finding freedom from the slavery of bitterness, unforgiveness, and anger.
Yes.
And so that was really, I wanted to help us think about the letter in the way that they may have thought about it when it was first written. So
that's really good.
Yep.
And so, but then this is where the letter from that point on gets into a little bit more of the process of forgiveness, right?
Yep.
Of the, it's not a formula that you follow necessarily. And yet it's definitely a wise formula that Paul follows there in a sense, or not a formula once again, but it's a process that he follows that was brilliant. And so tell us a little bit about that. And you also define forgiveness, which was helpful.
Yeah. So I just said forgiveness is the act of setting someone free from an obligation to you that is a result of a wrong done against you.
Yes.
And I think one of our questions that was sent in wanted to dive into that a little bit deeper and sort of try to nuance that out a little bit. So we can wait until we go through those questions, but yeah, that was the way we define forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I wanted to really make the point that this is, and you made the same point, Josh, that this is ultimately for our good. Forgiveness seems hard, and it is, and we talked about why it's difficult, but ultimately, like a lot of things that are difficult, it's ultimately for our good. So we said the process of forgiveness is a pathway to freedom.
Yeah.
And I think, for our podcast listeners, I'd want to say, I would want to push that even further to say, I'm not sure we grow beyond our level of forgiveness. I think lack of forgiveness creates a cap on our growth that we simply cannot get beyond, regardless of how hard we try. Our growth as followers of Jesus, certainly, but I think even as human beings in general, that our maturity and our joy is capped by our willingness to forgive.
Interesting. In that, in what you're saying is not just our, because I think we often think about forgiveness as what's been done for us, right? I don't think there's most of us see it that way, but what you're getting at is that if we're not people who are forgiving, we're not going to continue to grow the way we should. And interesting that you say that, because the forgiveness is grace, right? So this is where, I mean, it's one of the many ways that we experience God's grace. And so as we experience that grace, it's supposed to be passed on to people, right? And what better way to pass that on than forgiveness?
Right.
And in a sense that if the more we offer grace, the more we can grow in grace.
Yeah.
And so the more we offer forgiveness, you're saying, is the more that we grow in grace also, but in our understanding of our own forgiveness, but just growing as people, as followers of Jesus. That's interesting.
So I think it's a pathway to freedom. And one of the ways that I saw that reflected was in this Romans 12 text, and where Paul says, repay no one evil for evil. So that idea of revenge, when somebody wrongs you, our initial response would probably be repay, get angry, get even, right?
Exactly.
But give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all.
Yes.
And I think Paul is very intentional with the language there, guided by the Holy Spirit, to say, one, if possible, it's not always possible.
Yeah.
Right. As far as it depends on you, it doesn't only depend on you. And his scope that he has in mind is peaceably with everyone. There's not a person that God wants you to repay.
Yeah.
And then he'll finish that up by saying, don't be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Yes.
And if we put all that together, the desire to repay evil for evil actually is a weight that is on our shoulders that prevents us from being victorious or overcomers in this life. So that's the idea that I'm
interesting.
coming back to with that whole, we don't grow beyond our ability to forgive. If we're holding on to repaying and revenge, then we are essentially holding on to being defeated.
Yes. And what he's saying is that in a sense, we're holding on to evil. We're being overcome by the evil.
Overcome by evil. Evil is winning.
Wow.
And so that's that goes back to that very first point that I made about that we don't get to choose if we're wronged in this life. We only get to choose how we respond to the wrong.
That's right. I like how look at how Connie says it. If we don't give it, if we don't forgive, it'll consume us.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
That's a great, I like that word consume. Is actually very similar to a word that Paul uses in Galatians chapter 6. Let me see if I can find it really quick here.
I like that, because if we, it will overcome us, is what he's getting at.
So he says this is chapter 6, verse 8, for the one who sows to his own flesh. So he's already told us how we sow to the flesh, the deeds of the flesh, right? Are things like
revelry and there's all the words like all the drunkenness,
impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, right? So this idea, and then he says, so if you sow, for whoever sows to his own flesh will reap from the flesh corruption.
Got it. Yeah.
So, and he's not talking about like eternal corruption in this context. What he's talking about is the kind of life you're going to live is a life that, as Connie said, consumes us really from the inside out.
Totally. It's in that reap and sowing, right? Whatever you put into the system is what is going to grow out of it, right? And so you put in all of those things, even unforgiveness in there. And what's going to come out of it is more unforgiveness and all the pain of all of it.
Yeah, if you plant bitterness,
destruction,
right?
As Jessica says.
Yeah,
that's right.
Destruction. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah, that's what's going to come out, which makes this whole topic not incidental, right?
No. Yeah.
Right. It's pretty huge.
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, we kind of hinted at this, but there's so many times throughout. No, we more than hinted at it. We said it, but it's almost conditional. We didn't say it this way. But it sounds like the way Jesus talks about forgiveness, it almost sounds as if, no, let me say it more clear. It definitely sounds as if you don't forgive, you will not be forgiven.
Yeah. And Jesus messes with our soteriology there, certainly.
Right?
He
does.
Saved by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone, with a footnote. By the way, you gotta forgive. Yeah.
I've got some thoughts on that, but do you have that?
I mean, you're just quoting Matthew 18:35. So also my heavenly Father will do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother from your heart.
Yes.
Right. So essentially he's saying, if you don't forgive, you're not going to be forgiven.
Yes.
You're going to be cast into the outer darkness with weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Yes.
So there's that.
There is that. If you don't forgive, and here's this is one of those things that I don't think he's putting on another. I guess I could ask you this. What do you do with that? Let me ask you first, and then. Because is it a condition, an actual condition, as if, somebody who's trusting Jesus and yet they're holding on to that thing.
No, I don't think it's I don't think it's an extra condition. I think it's an extra litmus test or dial on our car to realize, like, how fully are we believing and trusting in the way of Jesus?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's,
it helps us recognize what's going on in our own soul, because we can easily deceive ourselves, right, into thinking, Jesus, I do trust you. I really do trust you. And he goes, great. Then forgive those who wrong you, and pray for those who persecute you, and bless those who take advantage of you.
Yes.
Right? if you believe me, if you trust me, if you're following me, then this is what it looks like.
See, and this gets to what we're believing in.
Right.
See, I think, and we get so sidetracked in a sense that we are believing for myself. We're believing about, some future state. We're believing so that I can be in heaven, things like that, which, not a bad thing, right? But as if that is the only thing. But we're also believing that God is the judge who can take care of all the wrongs, right? So
Right.
I don't have to go and make someone feel terrible for the rest of their life for something bad they did. I don't have to get even with them. It's allowing God to be God.
Yeah.
And it's as if that, and it's a very, very very clear way where we can step back and allow God to be God by offering the same forgiveness that we've received.
Yeah. And I think sometimes
Yeah.
the word faith can be a bit ambiguous and challenging for us.
Yeah.
Right. So I think in the Greek, it's typically the word pistis, and it
Mhm.
could also be translated trust.
Yeah.
Like, so to
I
believe
think
in
so.
Jesus, we often think of like cognitive, I agree with you, Jesus.
Mhm.
If we had a multiple choice test, I would circle forgive is the right answer.
Yes.
Right. And he's going, wonderful. But I don't think that's what faith actually
Totally.
means. I think sometimes a better word is trust.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when we trust, we actually believe that Jesus is correct about the nature of reality, and we align our lives and our decisions with it, right? So if I have faith or trust Jesus,
Yep.
I am going to do what he says. And one of the things he says is to love my enemies and to forgive those who wrong me, right? So either I have faith in Jesus or I don't, but that's one of the ways we can tell where we stand with him.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful or not,
Yeah,
but
I think so. I think I definitely. Yeah, I mean, because that takes it from being another act that we do. It's a part of what it means to be trusting God.
yes,
that is just that's where I was trying to go with that idea that forgiving people forgive people. It's kind of what the family does, right? There's a way of talking about rules and regulations.
You like saying that in like a mafia accent. It's what the family does. Family forgives.
But there are certain things that Jesus seems to be very clear about, right? That this is what it looks like when you walk in his ways, right? When you live out his ways. Now that is, we could look at those in two different ways. We could say these are a requirement to get in, which I think a lot of people have as a condition. So God doesn't love you if you're not these things. Okay? Instead, if it's an overflow of what he's done in us, right? So that the grace he's given us, right? It flows out. It looks like this, and now, and to be clear, it looks like this imperfectly, right? It looked like that perfectly in Jesus, right? He was forgiving. Man, they're on the cross and he's forgiving people, right? I mean, stuff that we would try to do, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not telling you if you're holding on and having a hard time forgiving, which a lot of people are, of which we're there also. Because I loved how you had us think about people that we were forgiving, because we need to forgive. And I'm guessing you even thought of doing that because
it was helpful
you
for
two
me
are a
in
human
planning it.
right? And that's where we're not doing it perfectly, but we're trying to walk in his ways,
right?
Trying to lean into that.
And I read a book a while back. I don't think I've shared it on Ryan brought it up, but it's called The Unshakable Kingdom by E. Stanley Jones.
Yes.
Okay. And in it, one of the things he brilliantly did in this book was he talked about the way of Jesus is in alignment with reality, as if to say, like, forgive those who wrong you, isn't just a teaching of Jesus. It's a way to align ourselves and our bodies with the way that God has designed the world to work, which is to say, it is objectively better to forgive your enemies and to forgive those who wrong you than it is to hold on to bitterness against them. And What's interesting about that is I think we could dive into the neuroscience. I think we could dive into biology. And I think what we'd find is that Jesus was right. It's better. It's better holistically for us. It's not better because it's Christian. It's better because it's true.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I think anybody that has held on to bitterness, and listen, there's a number of reasons that people do that. We can talk about that later on. There's reasons that I've done that. But I think if you were to talk to people who have both held on to bitterness and were able to let go of bitterness, I think that they would say it's better to let go.
Yeah.
And Dallas Willard once said, if Jesus knew of a better way, he would have been all about it. He would have been all for it, as if to say,
I love it.
He doesn't teach it because it's his idea. He teaches it to align us with the way he created the world to work, which I guess means it's his idea, but
totally.
But it's not. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally does.
Yeah, it's not true because he teaches it. He teaches it because it's true.
Yes,
that's a better way of saying it.
Which is a huge distinction. I mean, Jesus isn't just deciding to like, oh, I know, I'm going to make up a rule, right? Or make up a new way of doing things just because I want people to do this, right? I mean, it's not these arbitrary things.
No,
it is actually fits in with reality,
with
the way the world works, which is huge, which is why it has power, which is why it's so different than anything else.
Which is, if you're going, okay, come on, you guys, that sounds like new agey or whatever. I would just simply say, read John chapter 8, verses 31 through 32.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is read Jesus talking about truth, and truth is what's real.
Exactly.
And he says, if you're my disciples, you'll abide in my word. You will know the truth. You will know reality. And that reality will set you free.
It will
right?
set you free.
And this is one of those truths.
Yeah.
It's better to forgive than it is to be bitter.
Yeah.
That ends up setting you free.
Yeah.
That's why the process of forgiveness is a pathway to freedom.
That's right. That's right. As Jessica says, Jesus is reality. Or as I was watching my favorite show right now. I probably shouldn't really admit this. This is my favorite show, but because there's a lot of bad language in it. So I apologize, everybody. It's Ted Lasso, though.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Oh. So they quoted. Now someone else has said this. We may have said it here, or you may have said it, that the truth will set you free, but it'll make you really mad at first before it does, right? They said it slightly.
Somebody, I think it was in Comer's book. He said the truth, or he quoted somebody saying, the truth will set you free, but it will have its way with you first.
That's okay. Yeah, they said it with a little more on Ted Lasso, a little more creativity that I won't say here. But and yet it's so true. I was like, that was funny. I was watching it with my wife, and I was like, that's Jesus, because she said the truth will set you free, and then she said this extra part, and it will peeve you.
Yeah,
we'll say it that way. Before it does. That's so true.
That's true.
But I thought Carolyn was on fire here, because this is something that we're saying. If I believe that Jesus carried all my sins on the cross, why would I not believe that Jesus carried theirs too? Now, I think we can get it why, because there are a lot of reasons. But instead of going, why wouldn't we? I think inherent in some of the process that you recommended are some of the reasons, right? Because the first one, even
ascribing
value to someone who has wronged you.
Yeah,
that's hard.
Yeah,
that's not easy.
Yeah, because it's a lot easier to be bitter, to retaliate, etc., if we first dehumanize.
Yeah.
Right. And so you typically see this, especially in systematic types of oppression, that there's a dehumanization that goes on of the other.
Oh yeah.
And it then frees us to treat them however we want.
Yes.
Without, we have to sear our conscience to do that, I would argue, but without affecting us too deeply, because, well, they deserve it. Right. And so I think to ascribe value is sometimes a really challenging process, especially when we've been wronged deeply, but one that Paul challenges Philemon to live out when he says, consider him a brother.
Exactly. So
yeah,
he even kind of does that play on his name that
Yeah.
he is of value.
Useful.
He is useful, right?
Yeah.
He's going to
Yep.
be valuable to you. Absolutely. And that's where, that's where it is so easy. It is so easy to focus on the wrong
Yeah.
instead of focusing on, on their value, inherent value, but also even on the potential, like maybe they meant this for good, or giving people benefit of the doubt, those kind of things.
Man, assuming the best. Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard.
Or even, and this isn't a value piece, but I think I often try to think of the fact that, man, if I had grown up like this person and had the experiences that they had, I may believe the same things they believed.
Yep.
Right. Or even do the same things that they've done.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
Like, I think back on people that have wronged me, and not making excuses for why they did what they did, but can see, okay, there was things going on in their life that caused them to make the decisions they made.
Yep.
And I don't want to be above that to the extent that I'd say I certainly would have done something different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we can get to that place and ascribe value even to people that have wounded us deeply, I think we're at least positioned to keep moving down the path of forgiveness.
Yep. Oh my goodness, that's so true. So there's a group that I'm a part of that is called the AND campaign. Kind of we're doing these things, these conversations around race. Oh my goodness, they're so beautiful. But one of the things people, this guy, he's a pastor, white pastor, pointed out that I thought was brilliant. He says everyone today, he says all of his white friends, they assume that they would be ones who would have been marching with Dr. King, right? Because today we all see that, like, all that oppression, all those wrongs were bad, and we see how terrible that was. But the fact of the matter is, if we would have grown up in those times with those, in those institutions, with those parents, all those things, we might have been just like those people. And so we judge other people without stepping in their shoes.
Yeah.
And that's not ascribing value to them, to their experience.
Right.
And yes, things were wrong, but who are we, right? Who am I to think that I'm all that much better?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that was powerful. In fact, I love, this is where Miroslav Volf's quote was, oh my goodness, that's a convicting one.
Yeah. Forgiveness flounders because I exclude the enemy from the community of humans.
Gee.
Like that dehumanize.
Right? Yeah.
Even as I exclude myself from the community of sinners.
Exactly.
So I dehumanize the other, and then I deify myself.
Yes.
Right. Like I'm above any sort of wrongs. And I as I walked back through that, some of that book last week in preparation, oh my goodness, his book that I'll talk about in a few minutes.
Okay, good.
Is just so good.
Yeah.
So good. And he writes from firsthand experience, right? Like, so he's a Croatian. He was involved in, his family was involved in the Bosnian Yugoslavian war, or Bosnian Serbian war in Yugoslavia. I don't know. And then Croatia. You had all four.
There's a lot of problems there.
There's a lot of issues there.
Yes, there were.
Who are we, though, to even
yes.
talk about what they were?
Yeah. Ask us about history a couple thousand years before that, and it might be a little better.
Oh,
but
gosh, I'll once I get the book out,
all right, good.
I'll correct that wrong.
Yeah.
But so he writes from a firsthand experience. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so ascribe value. Actively, can I sort of scoot through these so we can get to those questions?
Yes, absolutely.
Actively pursue. So I want to, like, this idea of receive him, which I would argue is the primary call of the letter, is not it's not passive. It's active.
Yes.
It's like go after him, meet him, and welcome him.
This is where you referenced the prodigal son, the prodigal dad, right?
Yeah,
the father
totally
coming after and pursuing the son, not just passively sitting back receiving.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a great
So
observation.
we absorb the cost, and I think there's a question about this. So I'm going to leave
Yes,
that
okay,
there a
okay.
little bit.
Okay. Yes.
And then we anticipate refreshing, as like that's the whole point, that Jesus was aligning us with reality. This is better. It's better to forgive than it is to hold on
That's good.
to bitterness. But one of the questions that I think we've both gotten a lot is about reconciliation.
Yep.
When to know when reconciliation is possible, or even when it's a potential, and when to pursue it and when not to. So in reaching out to our therapist on our staff, who's just brilliant and so good. Her name's Kathy Murado. I said, Kathy, I don't want to mess this up. When do you encourage people to pursue reconciliation? What things have to be in place in order for reconciliation to be possible? And so here was what she said. The person must take genuine responsibility for the offense. They must repent and ask for forgiveness. So change their mind about what they did and ask for forgiveness. And they must demonstrate true change. So that takes time.
Yeah. And yet, I want to ask about this, because here's where I think what I would love to have Kathy here. I'd love to just ask her this question, because I think that what Kathy's doing is setting up this is a best case scenario. This is when we know it's safe to forgive, right? And especially for people who have been really, really hurt. And yet, same time, as I think about that, okay, and I think about even the story I told at the end, which actually I kind of do a retelling of that story in tomorrow's Daily Fill devotional. So
don't miss that.
You should
you can
check
sign
that
up
out.
online,
Exactly.
efcc.org, if you're not already signed up.
Yes. It was interesting to me. I started thinking that didn't happen to my great grandmother, my Nana, who this woman came, and sorry, you have to go back and listen. We don't have time to recap the story, but these things didn't happen. That woman never really said, "Oh, I'm so sorry for what I've done." But then one of the next points that you had to do with us coming. At times, we've got to go more than halfway, right? And when we do that, we're absorbing some of the costs, right?
Yes.
And so, this is definitely these rules these requirements, in a sense, for reconciliation are definitely safe. But at times, I feel like Christians are called, and I think we have to be sensitive to the Spirit in this. Of course, this is none of these are rules, hard and fast, right?
Oh, but no. And Kathy wouldn't say that either.
Of course, of course not. But at times, I think the powerful stories are when people kind of break those rules a little bit and still decide to reconcile, to take those first steps.
These would be rules that I would encourage people to follow if they've been physically harmed.
Yeah, that's good.
Physically abused, emotionally abused, and or if they're in the place where they're going, I don't feel like I'm in the place where I could be wronged again and still be okay.
That's
right?
really good.
These are ways to set up very clear boundaries that help you protect yourself. Right.
That's good. Yeah.
Now, other people may not need, quote unquote, need them quite as much. Maybe they're able to say, if they wrong me again, I'll be okay. And I'm going to take that risk. Right. But these, I think, are really helpful for people who would say, I can't have that happen again. And so I'm going to protect myself and still want to move forward, still want to have an open heart, but I can't be in the place where I get taken advantage of again like that.
Yeah.
So abuse, physical, emotional, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's
sense?
absolutely does. And yeah, I think that does. And as I think about it, here's where the story of my grandmother, I even said in the story that the tables were turned all of a sudden.
Yeah, they were.
And that turning of tables, like, right, when there's a power differential, right? When you're in a place of vulnerability, it's hard to lead the way towards reconciliation.
Yeah.
But when it's the other way around, when you're the one with the societal influence and whatever it is, even the money, right? Or whatever the power in that situation, it's easier to be the one to reconcile.
And that's why Philemon gets this letter, right?
That's exactly why. See, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that a lot.
All right. So there's some good questions.
Okay. There's some really good questions. Yeah. Let's go. Okay. There's some really long questions. So I'm going to try to summarize some of these a little bit. And so let's go back to what this definition, right? Yeah, let's start there. The definition of forgiveness. Okay, forgiveness is the act of setting someone free from an obligation to you that is a result of wrong done against you. Okay, that was the definition you said. Okay, they're asking for some examples of what an obligation to you might mean.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. I think so. If we go back to let's just go back to Old Testament law.
Yeah,
they had a law called lex talionis, which meant an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, right? So if you wrong me, and it was just simply their way of saying, I get to pay you back in whatever way you've hurt me. So if I lose my eye because of you, you lose your eye because of me. Essentially, whatever you do to me, I get to do back to you. And so we can roll that into if somebody steals money from you, then you would get it. You would be owed it back, right?
Owed naturally.
If someone manipulates you and fill in the blank, we could do this in a number of different ways. If someone lies to you and hangs you out to dry, you can do the same thing to them. Make it even, right?
Yeah,
eye for an eye, lex talionis. Well, what we're saying forgiveness is that even if somebody wounds you and takes your eye, as it were, that in forgiveness, you're saying, you don't owe me yours.
Yeah.
You don't owe me yours. So if you've stolen money from me, you don't owe it to me anymore. I'm absorbing the cost.
Okay. And so here's, I guess, I'm trying to summarize. There's about 3-paragraph question here.
Yeah.
That I kind of want to summarize. Basically, it comes down to this. There's people who've been so hurt, kind of emotionally. I mean, the word here is egregiously is what this questioner is asking. It's been bad. Okay. He recognizes that someone has forgiven, that the Bible tells us to forgive, continually forgive. But he points out that it seems like the person is asking for forgiveness. All right. If they come to you and ask for forgiveness, then you forgive. But there's often situations where people don't recognize, they don't think that they've done anything wrong.
Well, I mean, there's also situations where people that have wronged you may no longer be alive.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
if we limit forgiveness to the people that ask for it, we really have the potential to harbor bitterness. And so there is no way, there's nowhere that to forgive, that the condition of offering forgiveness is that somebody would ask for it. Now, certainly we would offer it if someone asked for it.
Okay.
But that's not
good.
a biblical condition for forgiveness. I would say that it is a condition for reconciliation.
Got it.
Because they need to be willing to name the wrong, right? And just like you can't reconcile with somebody that's no longer alive, but you can forgive them.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So
that's good.
That's where I would land on that. I don't know. You can feel free to add to that if you'd like, but that's sort of where I would land on it.
Yeah. And yet the what they're getting at is that it's so hard to, I mean, maybe they're kind of even asking, why is it so hard for us to do? I mean, the people asking this question, I know them pretty well. They love the Lord. They are like,
no doubt.
They're faithful as can be.
Yeah.
And yet kind of getting that, Ryan, like, why is it so hard?
Because there's a cost.
Okay.
I think it's hard because we know on some level that in order to really forgive, and so that's why I tried to unpack what's the cost.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. We give up the right to be angry.
Okay.
We give up the right for the dream of revenge, and we give up the right that they have to pay us back. And that is a
Oh my
challenging
goodness. Yeah.
cost to pay. And that's that emotional, psychological cost that we pay in forgiveness. But I think that's why.
Hmm.
And I could be wrong on that, but the reason that it's been challenging for me, because I've walked through some similar things, like it sounds like you're referring to that they walked through. That's when it was challenging, so challenging for me, is going, man, Lord, what does it look like to say, I'm not giving myself the right to be angry anymore? Because sometimes that anger is the very thing, or revenge is the very thing that builds a wall up around our heart to say, I will not get hurt again.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I break that down, even if I don't give them access to it, if I break that down, I am losing my ability to control what happens to me. And that is terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I didn't get into that as much, although it may have been helpful to get into that. But there's a fear, if I forgive, am I vulnerable to be wounded again?
Yep. Am I setting myself up to be wounded and hurt? And I mean, I guess in some ways we are. I mean, or at least we can't control that we won't be.
Yeah. And
right?
that's C.S. Lewis's argument about love in general.
In general, it is always.
But and I think this is part of Brene Brown's work. I forget which book she talks about this in, but that's what happens when we build the wall around our heart. It doesn't just prevent us from getting hurt. It also prevents us from being able to love.
Loved. Absolutely.
And that is the devastating nature of bitterness. It builds that wall, but it works both ways. We can't turn it off and turn it back on.
Oh man, that's good. Okay. Yeah, I think that
maybe Gwen's quote.
Gwen's quote here.
Gwen's comment there. Oh man, so good.
Forgiveness gives freedom to the person who is forgiving, regardless if the offender asks for forgiveness or not. That's so true. In fact, man, Gwen, Gwen said this much more eloquently. I'm going to summarize something. She even pointed out how reconciliation, even when two people don't reconcile or can't reconcile for some reason, that there's still, and she's getting this idea that we were talking about, is that we're still reconciled with God in a sense when we forgive. See that a wrong done between two people is not just two people. It's really God is involved in this.
Yes.
And that God is hurt when we hurt other people.
Right.
Because he doesn't just, make up rules and laws and all those things just for the sake of laws. It's because he doesn't like other people getting hurt.
Right.
And so he's in this loop. And so that there can always be reconciliation. It's just not necessarily with the people.
Right.
But God can be reconciled when we do that. I mean, I thought that was a great observation, Gwen.
So good. So good.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think Jesse's quoting, is that Nirvana?
I think all apologies would ask. What else could I be? Yeah, I think Jesse, that's a great. Wow, Nirvana, that was a good catch right there. That was Nirvana, absolutely. Yeah. And does that mean that it's that we all become apologists? All right, that's enough. Sorry about that. All right, wait, there was another question here. Yes. Okay, and I know we're running low on time, but this is good. Okay, here's the question. Okay, obviously, reconciliation is like it takes two people, and there's coming together in that. Forgiveness, not necessarily, but for forgiveness to be real, does it need any? I mean, is it ideal if there's any personal contact? Do we need to tell somebody that we've forgiven them?
Yeah, I think the 12-step process. And if I'm remembering it correctly, is that you do so, you offer forgiveness to them so long as it wouldn't be damaging to them, right? So if you're the one who's wrong, Yeah.
If you're the one who's done the wrong, you're making amends. At
Correct.
This, right?
Yeah. If you're the ones who is wrong. Yeah.
Okay.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Now, if you're on the other side, I would say the same thing applies.
That's
right.
interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
Really, forgiveness it takes one. It's between you and God, and at times it may not hurt the other person. It may not detract from the process, and so, yeah, I'd say reach out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can instigate more though, if the person doesn't think they're wrong.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I forgive you for the way that you've wronged me. And you're like, can we talk about that? How did I wrong you?
That's where this questioner goes, which a bunch of great questions, is thinking in the same lines. Because, what happens when the offending party, which is funny that in the question, it assumes that there's an offense, right?
Mhm.
So in their perspective, the offending party, we keep seeking forgiveness, but the offended party does not care and begrudges all time. So now it's the offended party.
Yeah.
So, okay, offending or offending. I'm not sure which one. So one person's offended. Basically, if the other person doesn't want to forgiveness at all, can you still forgive?
Right. Well, I would say that probably we're categorically in talking about reconciliation there.
Yeah.
And so I would go back to the 4-step process, a 3-step process for reconciliation, and taking genuine responsibility for the offense and repentance and asking for forgiveness. So I would say, no, there cannot be reconciliation there, but there can be forgiveness. But forgiveness only takes one.
Yep. I think that's
where those categories have to be.
We do.
It's helpful if they're clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, so there's levels of this, right? I mean, I'm guessing, and I'm guessing if a parent dies or a loved one dies of any kind that you had an issue of unforgiveness with, that's going to hurt more than if it was resolved and reconciled, right?
Yes.
In a sense, but each of these, there's a gradation of it, right? You can forgive and it frees you.
Yeah.
But you can forgive and it can begin restoring a relationship, and that's even better. Or you can forgive and it can lead all the way to complete reconciliation, right? There's all sorts of
gradation there.
Yeah, there's all sorts of steps in between
Mm-hmm.
that I think that God's heart is always in the reconciliation when possible, right? And oh man, someone asked this question, because I could see how the idea of heaven could be, the idea of God's forgiveness could be painful to some people who someone has wronged them in this life so bad, and yet they're a believer. And so I know one day I'm going to have to see that person. I could see people saying it so harshly that if that person's in heaven, I don't want to be, right? Because they've been hurt so bad. And yet there's all sorts of unforgiveness going on there. And yet at some point, it seems like reconciliation will happen.
Yeah.
And
my guess is we'll also go, oh my goodness, I hurt that person pretty deeply.
Yeah. Oh.
Ooh, deep breath, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I think it'll probably cut both ways a little bit more than we think it does now.
Not me. We're not in the community of sinners.
Yeah, oh, no. That's right.
Well, let me use that quote to transition us,
okay,
because you brought a book. That, man, by the way, great conversation, but we are running low on time, and so
great questions, and I'll respond to the email with a more complete answer to some of those.
There you go. Okay, Ryan brought a book, and while you're pulling out that book and talking about it, Ryan, I'm gonna respond. There was a question to put those notes in the Kathy's notes there in the chat. I'm going to add those while you are bringing up that book.
All right. The book is called Exclusion and Embrace. This is a little bit of what I would say is one of the quintessential theological works on forgiveness.
Ooh.
It is by Miroslav Volf. And like I said, I stumbled through. He is a Croatian, and he writes out of his own firsthand experience of teaching in Croatia, during the war in former Yugoslavia.
There you go. Okay. Yes, it is. It is a.
I think the Serbians were involved in some way.
Yeah. Well, they're right there. They're right there. So yes.
um, so this is a fairly theological work. It's not exactly easy reading, but it is well worth it. He talks about the power of naming the wrong, that's an essential part of forgiveness and reconciliation. His was the quote that we read about excluding ourselves from the community of sinners while we exclude others from the community of humans. And just if you want to dig deep into the theology of forgiveness, there is no better work than I know of. That being said, this book isn't for everybody. This is not a quick read. It's not an easy read.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Wow.
What I would say is that if you'd like more of a lay level type version of this book of Exclusion and Embrace, he wrote one. It's called Free of Charge, Giving and Forgiving in a Culture Stripped of Grace. It's also by Miroslav Volf. And if you'd like one that's maybe a little bit easier to read, this is the work for you. So, but Miroslav Volf has sort of given his life and theological work to the issue of forgiveness, I think because it was so close to his own heart. And his work has been a gift to the church at large. So
absolutely. Well, I think that we've touched on this, that it is so central to what it means to be people of grace.
Yeah.
Right. Is to be people who offer it to others. It's unmerited favor. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's especially powerful when you've been wronged, and hear a guy that has experienced so much wrong can really speak of that in a powerful way. So I think this, like I said, this has been a great study. It's been a great study for me. I know it's been one for you. That this is so much a part of what it means to live in the way of Jesus with his heart. This has always been his heart. Mm-hmm. And so as we do so, it's our prayer that you would enter into this, and even into the hard conversations, asking the tough questions about this, like this couple that's asking these. Oh my goodness, they're entering into the process. I think we talked about last week. It doesn't seem like there's forgiveness has to happen right away. But entering into that, beginning the process, starting to think about, this is all a part of the process of
the first step for some might be just uttering the prayer through gritted teeth. I want to forgive.
Oof.
I'm not there, but I want to. And that may be where some of you start, is by saying, God, I don't want it, but I want it.
Yeah. Oh, like you just said, even just the recognition to God, I don't want this, sometimes is where we need to start, even. And it's a recognition that,
naming that, man, my bitterness makes me feel safe.
Yeah.
God, show me what it looks like to forgive.
Yep. Well, Jessica says that's where I'm at. And amen. We're praying for you all in this, and we're praying that we can be a church of forgiveness. That offers it to the world. That values others, that pursues others, that they can be people that are refreshed because of forgiveness. Because wouldn't that be great to be in a community that is forgiving, that is gracious, and it would be a refreshing place to be.
I think it's the way Jesus describes the church.
That's right.
So
that's right.
May his kingdom come and will be done.
Amen to that. All right, everybody. Well, with that, we will say goodbye, and we hope to see you next time.
Week. Next week is Caleb.
Next week. Thank you. That's right. Next week it'll be a different time. So next week we will be on Facebook and on YouTube. It won't say Vitalogy though, so that it'll say Messy Grace, and part of our growth track series. And so it will be a part of a podcast if you're listening there. We will get that up, the audio up of that, as soon as possible, and we look forward to having you there. You can always join us. It's better when you're there. So we'd love to have you join us. But if you want to watch us online, that would be great as well. And next week, Wednesday night at 6:30. here in the worship center or online
or here
on
Facebook or YouTube
yeah,
or
exactly.
podcast.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yes. All right, everybody. Well, God bless you.
Yeah,
Have a
blessings.
great day.
See ya.